250. That's not how many patients he treated, not how many prescriptions he wrote, not how many house calls he made. 250 is the number of people one doctor killed. With a syringe, a smile, and a death certificate that he signed himself. His name was Harold Shipman, and for 27 years no one stopped him. He walked through front doors that were open willingly. He sat at kitchen tables. He rolled up sleeves. He found veins. And when it was over, he told families their loved ones had died of natural causes. Then he drove to the next house. How does a single doctor murder 250,000 people in a country with a national health service, medical regulators, coroners, and police without a single person stopping him? The answer is more terrifying than the crime itself. It starts with a mother. Nottingham, 1963. Harold Shipman is 17 years old. He's sitting at his mother's bedside. Her name is Vera. She's 42. She has lung cancer, and the cancer is winning. Every day, a doctor comes to the house and pushes a needle into her arm. Morphine. And Harold watches. He watches the pain drain from her face. For a few hours, she's calm. She's peaceful. She's his mother again. And then, she dies. Something lodged itself in that teenager's mind. Something about the needle. Something about the power it held. The ability to take a person from agony to stillness in the space of a heartbeat. Criminologists would later trace a direct line from that bedroom in Nottingham to hundreds of other bedrooms. Bedrooms where Shipman would, decades later, perform the same ritual. Only his patients weren't dying of cancer. They were dying of him. He was bright, working-class family, father drove a lorry, nobody had been to university. His mother had drilled into him a sense of superiority, a belief that he was destined for more. He got into Leeds Medical School, met a girl named Primrose at a bus stop. They married in 1966. She was 17, 5 months pregnant. He graduated in 1970, became a junior hospital doctor at Pontefract General Infirmary. And it was there, according to the official inquiry that would come decades later, that the killing began. The inquiry's final report identified the first certain murder in 1972. He was 26 years old, a junior doctor, already killing. They found serious suspicions about 7 deaths during this period, including a 4-year-old girl. Nobody noticed. Nobody asked questions. He moved on. In 1974, Shipman became a GP in Todmorden, West Yorkshire. By March 1975, the inquiry confirmed he'd murdered a patient named Eva Lyons, his first verified killing as a family doctor. But something else was happening. Shipman had developed an addiction to pethidine, a powerful opiate painkiller. He was forging prescriptions to feed it. By the time his partners caught on, he'd illicitly obtained roughly 70,000 milligrams of the drug. He was ejected from the practice, taken to court, convicted of dishonestly obtaining drugs and forging NHS prescriptions, fined £600, sent to a psychiatric rehabilitation unit. And then the system that was supposed to protect patients did something extraordinary. It let him go back to work. The General Medical Council gave him a warning. That's it, a warning. He wasn't struck off. He wasn't banned from prescribing controlled drugs. He wasn't monitored. Nobody followed up. In 1977, Harold Shipman walked into a group practice in Hyde, Greater Manchester, and introduced himself as their new partner. His colleagues knew about the drug conviction. They accepted him anyway. He would spend the next 21 years in Hyde. He would become one of the most popular doctors in town. Patients waited a year to get on his list. One described being accepted onto it as feeling like winning the lottery. And during those 21 years, he would kill over 200 people. The method was devastatingly simple. Shipman obtained diamorphine, pharmaceutical-grade heroin, one of the most powerful opioids in medicine, through a scheme so brazen it almost defied belief. He overprescribed it to patients who genuinely needed pain relief. Then he kept the excess. He collected unused supplies from the homes of recently deceased patients, telling families he was disposing of them safely. He didn't maintain a controlled drugs register because the routine inspections that were supposed to check, they'd quietly lapsed. Nobody was counting. Then he visited his victims, mostly elderly women, mostly living alone, mostly in the afternoon during his house call rounds. He'd inject diamorphine intravenously. At the doses he administered, consciousness faded within moments. Breathing slowed, stopped. He would sometimes sit with them, quietly, until it was over. Then he signed the death certificate himself. Heart disease, stroke, pneumonia, old age. He'd falsify the patient's computerized medical records after the fact, inserting entries that made them appear sicker than they'd been. And he'd press the family towards cremation, which destroyed the body and every trace of evidence along with it. Among his 215 confirmed victims, 171 were women. He was present at 19% of all patient deaths in his practice. In similar practices nearby, 1%. An extraordinary number of deaths occurred in the afternoon during his visiting hours. Front doors were found unlocked. Friends and relatives noticed he behaved strangely when they arrived. Abrupt, dismissive, eager to leave. The patterns were there, written in the data, visible in the cremation forms, buried in the death certificates. They were screaming, and for nearly 3 decades, no one listened. Almost no one. In early 1998, Dr. Linda Reynolds, a GP at the Brooks Surgery in Hyde, did something her profession had trained her not to do. She questioned a colleague. Reynolds had been asked repeatedly to countersign cremation forms for Shipman's patients. The forms were for elderly women. The deaths were sudden. The frequency was abnormal. She took her concerns to the local coroner, John Pollard. He contacted Greater Manchester Police. An investigation was opened. And then it was closed. On the 17th of April, 1998, police concluded there was insufficient evidence. The Shipman inquiry would later deliver a withering verdict. The investigation had been staffed with inexperienced officers. They failed to check Shipman's criminal record, failed to contact the General Medical Council, failed to examine his computer records, failed to seize any evidence. The system had been given a second chance to stop him. It blinked. After the investigation closed, Shipman killed 3 more patients. Then he made the mistake that ended everything. June 24th, 1998, Kathleen Grundy is found dead at her home in Hyde. She's 81 years old, a former mayoress, active, healthy, wealthy. Shipman had visited her that morning. He signed the death certificate, old age. He pushed for cremation. But Kathleen Grundy had a daughter, and her daughter was a solicitor. Angela Woodruff received a phone call from a fellow solicitor named Brian Burgess. He told her a new will had surfaced, one that left her mother's entire estate, roughly £386,000, to Dr. Harold Shipman. The will was typed on a battered old typewriter. The signature was crude. The language was absurd. It said essentially that Grundy wanted to reward Shipman for all his care, that her family didn't need the money. Angela Woodruff knew immediately. This was not her mother's will. She went to the police. This time, the investigation didn't close. Kathleen Grundy's body was exhumed on the 1st of August, 1998. Toxicology revealed lethal levels of diamorphine in a woman who had no reason to have any opioids in her system. Police pulled on the threads, and the fabric of Harold Shipman's entire career started to come apart. They examined his patient records. They found entries time-stamped after patients had died. Retroactive falsifications designed to make the dead look sicker than they'd been. They checked telephone records against Shipman's claims of having called ambulances. No calls had been made. They exhumed more bodies, 12 in total. 9 showed the same thing: morphine in skeletal muscle tissue. Stable enough to survive years in the ground. No acute cause of death. Just a drug that shouldn't have been there. On the 7th of September 1998, Harold Shipman was arrested. In his possession, police found a Brother typewriter, the same model used to forge Kathleen Grundy's will. Forensic analysis matched his left little finger fingerprint to both the will and the machine. The man who had killed for 27 years was brought down by a typewriter, a fingerprint, and a daughter who refused to look away. The trial began on the 5th of October, 1999, at Preston Crown Court. Shipman faced 15 counts of murder and 1 count of forgery, a fraction of his actual crimes, but the cases with the strongest forensic evidence. The prosecution's argument was stark. Shipman killed because he enjoyed exercising control over life and death. None of his victims were terminally ill. This was not mercy, this was power. Angela Woodruff took the stand as the first witness. Her composure and determination impressed the jury. Defense attempts to discredit her failed. Shipman himself was arrogant on the stand, haughty, dismissive, caught in obvious lies, his stories shifting under cross-examination. The careful, controlled facade he'd maintained for decades cracked in the courtroom. The judge, Mr. Justice Forbes, spent 2 weeks guiding the jury through the evidence. He cautioned them no witness had actually seen Shipman kill. They would need to weigh the circumstantial evidence, the toxicology, the falsified records, the timestamps, the patterns. At 4:43 p.m. on Monday, the 31st of January, 2000, the foreman stood. All verdicts were unanimous. Guilty on 15 counts of murder, guilty of forgery. Shipman stood motionless. Not a flicker of emotion crossed his face. His wife Primrose, wearing black, sat impassive. Their sons looked at the floor. Justice Forbes broke with tradition. Rather than writing privately to the Home Secretary, he addressed Shipman directly, in open court. He recommended a whole life tariff. Harold Shipman would never leave prison. 57 days of trial, 15 life sentences, and the knowledge that 15 was only the beginning. The next day, the Secretary of State for Health stood in the House of Commons and announced the most sweeping public inquiry into a medical professional in British history. Dame Janet Smith, a High Court judge, was appointed to chair it. The Shipman inquiry would take 4 years, produce 6 reports totaling 5,000 pages, examine 2,500 witness statements, and 270,000 pages of evidence. It cost £21 million. Its conclusions were devastating. The first report found that Shipman had killed at least 215 patients between 1975 and 1998. In 45 more cases, there were grounds for serious suspicion. A statistical analysis put the excess death figure at 236. But the inquiry didn't stop at counting the dead. It turned its gaze on the systems that had allowed one man to kill for nearly 3 decades. What it found was a catalogue of failures so total, it seemed almost designed to enable a killer. Death certification. A single doctor could certify a cause of death with no independent check. Cremation forms. The second doctor's safeguard was a rubber stamp. An audit found only 42% had been completed accurately. Controlled drugs. No tracking of prescribing habits. No routine inspections of GP drug registers. GP oversight. No peer review. No clinical performance assessment. No mechanism to flag that one doctor's patients were dying at vastly abnormal rates. Multiple complaints had been filed against Shipman over the years, including a six-figure negligence settlement in 1989. None triggered a meaningful investigation. And underlying all of it, one cultural truth the inquiry identified with surgical precision. Between 1976 and 1998, not a single formal complaint was raised about Harold Shipman's clinical conduct. Not one. The inquiry attributed this to the deep, unquestioning reverence with which the British public regarded their doctors. Shipman didn't slip through the cracks, he walked through wide-open doors. The final report, published in January 2005, extended the investigation to Shipman's early career. Its conclusion: he had killed approximately 250 patients in total, beginning as early as 1971, when he was just 25 years old. But Harold Shipman would never read that final report. On the morning of January 13, 2004, one day before his 58th birthday, prison officers at Wakefield found him hanging in his cell. He'd used bedsheets, tied to the bars of his window. He'd given no prior indication he was at risk. No note was left, no confession, no explanation. He was cremated, the same method of disposal he'd pressed upon the families of hundreds of his victims. His wife Primrose maintained his innocence. His 4 children remained loyal. He never confessed. He never showed remorse. He never explained why. And that is perhaps the most unsettling thing about the story of Harold Shipman. Not the scale, though 250 lives extinguished by a single pair of hands is almost incomprehensible. Not the method, though the image of a trusted doctor calmly injecting poison into an elderly woman's arm while she thanks him for his care is the stuff of nightmares. Not even the systemic failure, though the knowledge that it could have been stopped decades earlier is enraging. The most unsettling thing is the silence. He sat in a cell for 4 years. He had every opportunity to speak. He chose not to. He took the answer to the only question that mattered, why, and he destroyed it. The same way he destroyed his victims, quietly, deliberately, and on his own terms. Nearly 300 families were left without closure. A nation's trust in its doctors was shaken to its foundations. A 6-volume inquiry rewrote the rules of British medicine. The reforms came: medical revalidation, controlled drug tracking, death certification oversight. A medical examiner system, recommended in 2005, wasn't fully implemented in England until 2024. Nearly 20 years later, Dame Janet Smith herself, speaking in 2018, offered a bleak assessment. Without a medical examiner in place, she said, we have virtually the same system as when Harold Shipman was able to commit his crimes. Could it happen again? The systems say no. The silence says, we don't know.